What's up guys, I'm BTC, a brand new patch, the new hero is on the PTR, but with it came a massive amount of buffs and nerfs to a lot of the other characters. I've already made a video going over the brand new character Baptiste, all of his abilities, the ultimate, and how the character is going to work. If you haven't seen that, there'll be a link for it down below and up on top of the screen. But in this video, we're going to talk about all the other characters who are getting buffs because there is a ton of changes in this patch. So the first thing is another change to armor, which is beam type weapons are now going to have 20% reduced damage when hitting armor. This is going to be things like Symmetra, Zarya, and damage over time effects no longer mitigated by armor. So dev comments, the damage taken by armor from damage over time effects such as Widowmaker's Venom Mine and beam weapons like Symmetra's Photon Barrier varied greatly. Now it will be more consistent and predictable. Moving on to the individual character balances, we start with Ana, who got a nerf. Nano Boost, the heal was reduced from 300 down to 250, and essentially they felt that while it was good, it was too good for the tank characters and it gave too much health. But 250 is still a lot of instant health, so yes, it's a nerf, but it's not gonna change too much. Next is Doomfist. He got some buffs. The Rising Uppercut and the Seismic Slam abilities both had their cooldowns reduced from 7 seconds down to 6 seconds. Developer comments, reducing the downtime of Doomfist's abilities should make his gameplay feel more fluid. This might help him a little bit. I still think that Doomfist is going to be broken and just a bad pick. Even with these changes, even with this buff to the cooldowns on those abilities, I think they really need to revert the Seismic Slam distance and put that back where it was, because otherwise, I don't know, he's just a problematic character. Next is Hanzo's Sonic Arrow. This is a buff. The detection radius was increased from 7 to 9 meters, and they said that because of how dense the environment is on some maps, Sonic Arrow can feel ineffective in some areas, so they increased it to make it more effective. Now, this is a 2-meter increase to the radius, which is quite significant, so that means that detection area is much larger than it was before. Next is Mccree. He's got a nerf and a buff. So the first is the Fan the Hammer. Damage was reduced from 55 back down to 50. And then Deadeye. Damage per second increased from 275 to 550 after locking onto targets for 2.5 seconds. Dev comments, after reducing armor's effectiveness for all heroes, Fan the Hammer doesn't need to deal quite as much damage. Increasing Deadeye's damage after being locked on for a bit makes it more effective while attacking high health static targets like barriers and heroes with over 600 health. It will not impact how dangerous this is for heroes under 600 health. And because High Noon is, or Deadeye, is one of the worst ultimates, probably the worst in the game, it's not dangerous for characters under 600 health because it's not dangerous at all. But, I mean, it is nice because it'll help you break the barriers if you don't get completely destroyed before it actually gets the 2.5 seconds to charge it up. The Fan the Hammer is going to be a pretty noticeable damage nerf. This is not going to change anything for the lower health characters, but when you're going against tanks, it's definitely going to be noticeable. You're going to have a bit less damage towards those tanks. Next is Mei. She got a buff. Primary damage increased from 2.25 to 2.75, which is basically 45, an increase up to 55 damage per second. But she got a nerf on the Ice Wall. The health was reduced from 500 down to 400. Dev comments, increasing the damage of Mei's primary fire should make her freeze and icicle combination more potent. I think it was already pretty strong. I don't think that's the issue with Mei. I think freezing someone and then using the right click was already really strong. Making the pillars on Mei's Ice Wall easier to destroy means less waiting for the wall to disappear on its own and more opportunities to counter it. I think that's okay. Next up is Moira, her Biotic Grasp. This is the healing part of it. Heal over time duration increased from 3 to 4 seconds. Total healing increased from 50 to 65, and these minor changes should make Moira's passive healing effect slightly more effective when topping off an ally's health. So whenever you apply the healing to an ally, there is a small heal over time that gets put on them after you stop healing them. So this is what that change is going to be. It just increases that little extra heal over time. I don't think Moira really needed it. She already has probably the highest raw healing output in the entire game, so I don't think she needed more healing. I think she needed a little more utility. But anyways, Orisa, Fusion Driver, movement speed penalty while firing was reduced from 50 to 30%, and dev comments, as a defensive tank, Orisa can have trouble pushing forward with the team, allowing Orisa to move faster while firing. It should make it easier to apply pressure on the enemy team and use her barrier in proactive ways. I think this is a good change. It doesn't completely eliminate the movement penalty, but it reduces it, makes it so that she doesn't have to stand in one spot for too long. But, I mean, one of the problems is that if you're moving forward, you're not going to have the barrier. I mean, you would have to throw it way ahead of you and then start to move forward in order to attack. So, I mean, it's nice, but I don't think it's going to change too much of how Orisa is played. Next is Farah. She got a minor buff. Rocket launcher minimum explosion damage increased from 16.25 to 20, and this change sets the rocket launcher's minimum damage to where it was before we rebalanced direct impact in the recent patch. So this is just a very minor damage increase to her rockets. But this is only one aspect of it, because the way the rockets deal their damage, it's broken into a direct damage versus a splash damage. And what they did is they just kind of modified it where it looks like they didn't say it explicitly here, but it looks like they probably took a little bit of her damage out of the direct damage and applied it into the splash damage. So you still have the 120 total for the amount of damage you can do per rocket, but now it's just kind of moved a little bit, and they just kind of rearranged it. So now you don't have to do the direct hit to get that little extra damage. Next is Soldier 76. He got a bunch of buffs. First off is the pulse rifle damage increased from 19 to 20. So that one damage increase that they took away from him like a year ago and then basically destroyed the character, they just gave it back to him. Next is sprint delay before you can fire the weapon after using sprint reduced from 0.5 to 0.3. This is a very minor thing. I mean, we're talking, 0.2 seconds here, but it's probably going to be noticeable when you're playing. And then Tac Visor can now target Riptire and the Immortality Field. I feel like they had to make this change because of the Immortality Field. It was probably going to be too strong and it was going to cause problems, so they decided to change that. And they said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just add Riptire in there too? So this change should potentially allow for Soldier 76 to kill an enemy hero one shot sooner. Reducing the time between when you sprint and when you can fire can make the ability more fluid and responsive, and giving Tac Visor the ability to target Junkrats, Riptire, and the Immortality is a quality of life improvement since these are both critical targets. Next is Sombra. She also got a buff. The hack cooldown is reduced by half when hacking a health pack. The cooldown on hack often made it feel less effective to target health packs instead of players. This will make both health packs and players viable targets for hacking, so this just means that you have a little bit less downtime when you're using it on the health packs, which I guess is good, and it probably means there's going to be more health packs that are hacked. Torbjorn, he got a really big buff. Base health increased by 50 armor. He now has 250, which is the same as Brigitte, and the Overload armor gain reduced from 150 to 100. So they took away a little bit of the extra ability armor, but they gave him as just like normal, which is a pretty significant buff. And the dev comments, Torbjorn's survivability was a bit low, so we've shifted some power from his Overload ability to his base health. Overall, this is a big buff. This is a very big buff. I don't know if it's going to change anything and make it better for Torbjorn, but I mean, it's definitely a buff to the character. Next up is Widowmaker. She got a pretty significant nerf. Her ultimate Infrasight reveals enemy health bars, which is a tiny buff, but it's now canceled on death, where before it would just last until it ended. But dev comments Infrasight had no counter to its effect, so now it ends when Widowmaker dies. To balance this out and the higher risk of use, Infrasight now reveals enemy health bars to Widowmaker's team. I think if they're going to do that, they probably should have given it more than just, oh, you can see the enemy health bars. I mean, that's not... I mean, it's nice, but I don't think that counters the losing the whole ultimate when you die at all. So I think they definitely should have added something more than just, oh, you can see the enemy health bars. Next up is Hammond. I'm not even going to call him that other name. Next is Hammond. He got a really significant buff. Adaptive Shield no longer cancels roll mode. Dev comments, this will make Adaptive Shields a more powerful tool since being forced out of roll mode left Hammond more susceptible to fire. This is a really nice buff because now when you're just kind of rolling around in the back line and you're trying to spin around objects or whatever to get that max speed and do that damage and then pile drive and all that sort of stuff, now you can just use the adaptive shields and you don't have to worry about getting knocked out and losing all of your speed and that momentum and stuff. So that's pretty significant. So a bunch of characters got some really big buffs. Now, I don't know how much of this is going to change the meta, if anything. So there you have it, guys, a ton of balance changes to a lot of characters. And once more, I did do a full breakdown of Batiste and all of his abilities. There'll be a link for that down below. So what do you guys think about these changes? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.